All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Faris Alami, and this is the Finjan Show. I'm really excited today to have this discussion with Bill, who will share with us some of his insights about his own journey. This episode is brought to you by Resilient Entrepreneur Program, which is a program that was designed to support entrepreneurs launching and sustaining their businesses during crisis. Bill, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, it's great to be here, Faris. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I can't wait to unfold some of the things that I got to learn about you over the last few conversations we had, and it will be interesting for probably our audiences to know your journey. So maybe you could first tell them, who's Bill and what do you do?
Sure. So we have a company, my wife and I lead a company that's called Meet, and we help international B2B companies exhibit at US trade shows. So we help them enter the US, and we're all on the revenue generation side. So we help them, in some cases, find their early customers, and in other cases, we bring the rocket fuel that helps them scale. So about half of our clients were their first employees in the US. So very much on the early customer acquisition side. The other half have existing teams, and then we're much more of an accelerant at that point to really help them hit the inflection point and grow quickly.
What a cool concept. And Bill, maybe you could tell the audience, what were you doing before and how you got here?
Yeah, so my wife and I have kind of had an interesting journey. We have some corporate background, but pretty quickly, at least I realized I wasn't a very good employee. So it became clear that I needed to kind of figure out my own thing. So we, over the course of more than 20 years, maybe like 25 years, have not only we've started 8 companies, lucky enough to exit a couple of them, but we also bought and sold some companies too. We kind of, like people look at real estate, we bought and fixed up some companies and sold them. So I've definitely been, and in fact, even going back to college, I was starting companies. So kind of been in the entrepreneurial space for a while.
Yeah, and you've been doing this for a while too, if I remember.
10 years, yeah.
That's not an easy task, 10 years.
I'll tell you, it's the funnest. I mean, we've had some really fun businesses, but the clients, the people we work with in this business are, some of the coolest people. I mean, they're, from everywhere else, aiming to come into the US. So there's always a good story.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure there are lots to share. I'm interested in your personal journey, as you know. So as you take this business and, you've started many of them, we could focus on this last one here. Mm-hmm. There are times that you feel like up in the sky, touching the sky, and there's times that you feel like in the bottom of the ocean, the world is collapsing. And they might be the same moments. I usually use the example, you get a big contract, you're like, great. And you're like, how am I going to do this now? Or the other way around, you lose a big contract and you're like, oh, what am I going to do now? So I'm curious, maybe you could help us, the audience here, just one of your maybe low moments for now. We can start with the low, like where you felt the world is collapsing, I don't know what's going to happen, and you kept moving. So maybe you could share one of those moments.
Yeah, if you don't mind, and there's a reason why I might not necessarily change the question, but answer it a little bit different. So this business, I'll tell you, and the reason, and there's a point to this, but this business actually is we do very predictably well, and that's because we validated demand before we started the business, and so we do exactly what we teach our clients to do in terms of making sure that we have something that the market wants, that's sustainable for us, that that is can be sort of ongoing. So let me go back a couple of businesses. We started a business which was, in my head, really cool. It was called Street Smart Speakers, and what we did was helped people like you and I, professionals who speak. We help them get speaking gigs. So at professional organizations and associations, and all the places we want to speak to sort of build reputation. And so we had it's a two-sided model. We had like 400 organizations and associations that we were fulfilling speakers for, and we had 400 or so professionals who are looking for speaking gigs. After 3 years of knocking our head against the wall, and my partner had taken at that point 2 businesses to the Inc. 500 list. So he was no chump. After 3 years of working our butts off and investing, blood, sweat, tears, we sold that business for $1. And why? Because we fell in love with our idea. We didn't validate demand. We didn't validate that there was a sustainable business model. And so, to me, the biggest lesson I've learned, and I have the good fortune to mentor kind of all around the world, and it's ideas are cheap essentially, and it's not about that. Before you go and build something, validate that there's a customer or a whole bunch of customers who are desperate for your solution, or a solution to the problem, that the problem you see is real and sort of valuable, and that would be not only true in whatever marketplace you're building the sort of first business, but when you expand to new markets, you should do the same exercise.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, clearly there's so much to unfold with what you just said. So
years of therapy.
Bill, let's take a break and we'll be right back to keep unfolding maybe some other stuff here. Thank you so much. We'll be right back after these short messages. Welcome back, everyone, and thank you so much for joining. This is Faris. I'm your host. This is the Finjan Show, and today we have Bill with us. And Bill, what a story, and what a lot of guts to sell your business for $1. I'm glad you didn't just at least shut it down, which I know many people just would have done that and walked away. So you still got $1 out of it.
Well, and it wasn't really that. What we cared about was making sure the clients we had continued service. So there was a business that was not necessarily a competitor, but they could easily absorb the clients and continue to give them value. That was our biggest concern. Obviously, the buck, we each took home 50 cents. That it wasn't not even an ice cream.
Can you even tip anyone that?
No, unfortunately not. But yeah.
No, I'm very aware. I mean, I've had few of my own businesses that I just end up closing, and you just try to minimize your losses and try to get your customers to move on to whatever best thing for them to keep them going. I've also been fortunate to receive at the other end where someone from my competitors will call me and say, "Hey, I'm out. I don't want money, but I want you to take these clients, and I also want you to take a look at these 2 employees. What do you think?" And actually, that was early in my career, and it was one of the best things that ever happened to my career. So, you never know what one person's nightmare could be a dream for another, or the other way around. So it's just all give and take. Would love to hear, Bill, one of your moments where you felt like you launched this business and you're feeling really high. One of those high moments where you felt like this is working, it's doing what I wanted to do, and I'm getting to where I want to go. Just maybe share with us with one of those. I know that you've had many of them. I'm just curious for one.
Yeah, a lot of it comes, when we hear a client testimonial. I mean that, so our, a lot of our work, and I think somewhat similar to your work is, you're essentially coaching a client through a process, and they've come with certain assumptions, certain hypotheses, and sometimes there's some ego, right? We're dealing with business owners, with leaders, and helping them not necessarily be open to our idea, because our idea we're not correct either, but open to a process that reveals the right path, right? So, a lot of what we work on is helping people when they come into the US have a very agile entry, so that as we do testing and sort of prove, sort of what customers or prospects will respond to, that they're agile enough to be able to, and their infrastructure in the home office is flexible enough to be able to sort of support whether it's changes in strategy, changes in messaging, any of those types of things, and that, that the ego can be sort of put in the back seat in favor of, again, sort of demand or market-based decision making. And that's really, moving towards that has really, really been a huge change for us. And it's really shown in our business today. It's really shown in both in terms of results and customer testimonial.
That's great. Thank you so much. I mean, there's nothing better than having someone receive the value, or even more than the value that they perceive to get from you. This, I always feel it's much more fulfilling than any dollars or anything else you could put on, right? So
the first thing I tell our customer, the whole reason we're sort of soliciting you to work with us is for your testimonial. The money is sort of meaningless without the value.
Yeah, I always feel money is nothing but the results of the work that was done, and people love the work versus the money.
Yeah,
Anyway,
exactly.
thanks for sharing that. Bill, as you know, one of the things we're trying to do with this podcast is really to bust any myths about entrepreneurship, and specifically, in the space today that we're in, a lot of people think that they could, it sounds like it's a trendy thing. People want to just jump in and become an entrepreneur, and I know that having gone through multiple journeys yourself, you probably, not that you would ever listen to yourself, as you know, if you were to go back and advise yourself. And I also feel that, well, part of it is just the growth that you go through, and we all go through that phase. If there was something that you hope someone would maybe catch on today, and that's starting or growing at the stage of where a change is happening, what would be one word or a word of wisdom that you would leave someone behind, including if it was yourself starting now? What would you tell them?
Yeah. So here's the myth that I see on universities and accelerators and so many different sort of ecosystem organizations, is that entrepreneurship is easy. It's 3 steps, really easy, right? Have an idea, get funding, buy a yacht. Those are my 3 steps. And that, that's a bunch of BS. Do not listen. If somebody is selling you that, run quickly the other way. The only thing that matters in the process, pull out your business model canvas, focus on 2 of the 9 rectangles. One is who your customer is, what your customer segment is. And then the second one is what your value proposition is. Don't do anything else until you validate that you've identified a customer segment that has a high demand for a certain value proposition. In other words, for a promise that you would give them, some value, whether it's a product or a service or whatever. But prove everything, believe nothing.
Love it. I'll help you out there. It's called customer market fit.
Oh, exactly right. Yeah, product market fit is the key.
But thank you so much for sharing that insights. That's really powerful. To focus on the fit of the market for the product that you're launching is much more powerful than it is to chase anything else.
Don't even build a product yet. Just draw the product and hand it to them and say, can you imagine this? And they say, yes, I want 7 of them. Don't build. Yeah. You use the MVP process, right? Go and build the most minimally viable, version. And that's really, really important.
Great. Well, Bill, clearly I can keep you all day, but I know you have a few more things to do. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, my pleasure entirely. Thanks, Faris. Thanks for having me.
For those who are with us, thanks for being here. This is the Finjan Show. I'm your host, Faris Alami.